The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So Elizabeth Warren now is in an interesting position where she is much more forcefully trying to retake the narrative around her position on healthcare and Medicare for all. And for a while, there was a question as to, well, she talks about she likes Medicare for all, but she seems open to other things. And it seemed like the way to put an end to that hemming and hawing, or perception of hemming and hawing, was when she put out her plan for how to pay for Medicare for all. And unfortunately, when she did that, we covered it, and it was not satisfactory to basically anyone. There were some people who said, oh, this is not nearly an aggressive enough plan for how to pay for it, and it wouldn't actually work. There were others who said, oh, this is crazy. This is just sucking up money from all sorts of different people and sources, and it's no way going to work. So last Friday, Elizabeth Warren tried again. She put out a second plan, and this one, the idea was, we're going to beef up the funding inflows with what is essentially a public option, but we're going to put the country on a path to Medicare for all in a reasonable and specific time frame. And once again, people are saying, this is terrible. This is like the Biden plan. He's talking about a public option, and we don't like it either. So I think at this point, there's a couple things that we can say, Pat. Number one, it's not just Warren who is having some struggles with exactly how to pay for Medicare for all, because if you want to look closely at any of the plans like we've done, even Bernie's, there are serious questions about whether the plans will actually work as designed. That's not unique to Elizabeth Warren. And number two, I would add, I think at this point, Elizabeth Warren has been successfully maligned enough on the issue of healthcare that no matter what she puts out, she is not going to actually stop the criticism from coming.
It sounds to me like Elizabeth Warren is trying to do some political posturing here. So I think she has determined that the furthest left that someone's going to be able to take in the Democratic primary is what Bernie Sanders has said on Medicare for all, which is that we're going to try to transition in on a 4-year period. And then you can also take a look at the other side, like the furthest right position that someone can have in the Democratic primary, considering that they support Medicare for all. And that's maybe like Kamala Harris. Like, she wants to do this 10-year transition, which doesn't seem like it would work because, that's just way too much time. And by the time that, maybe 8 years comes around into the transition, a Republican president comes in and then undoes all of her work. So maybe that wouldn't be the most feasible thing to do. And I think Elizabeth Warren says, all right, we have this extreme on one side, we have this extreme on the other side. Maybe it's best to calculate and do something in the middle here, to do this like temporary public option thing that will kind of transition people into the system.
Which everyone seems to hate.
Yes.
And the thing is, Kamala Harris, just take that example, a 10-year transition plan. If you look at serious reports, they say it could take 20 years if the U.S. started the transition today until our healthcare system would look like that of Australia or Canada. Now, I'm not saying it would take 20 years to implement a single payer system. That you can do much more quickly. But a lot of making those systems work well is that the infrastructure reduces the cost of care. And that piece, to really start looking like those other countries, could take 20 years. So this is so tough, Pat, because, this is the bonus show. So sometimes we have to be careful in certain ways on the broadcast show about, focusing on the good when it's better than what we have. But the truth is that it's not unreasonable that if and when we get Medicare for all, it will be decades, if we successfully get that long, until our country's healthcare system will look more like some of the ones we're trying to mirror. That's a reality.
Yeah, and the thing is, we can't really model it off of other countries, because in other countries, even the right-wingers support some version of single-payer healthcare. Even Margaret Thatcher said that the NHS over in Britain was something that the nation should be proud of.
Right.
That's not something that we see here amongst our right wing. I mean, the right wing would want to get rid of whatever we have. If we have some sort of universal healthcare framework, a transition period, whatever you want to call it, they would undo that right away if they got back power. So we don't have that amount of time. Like, we have maybe 2 or 4 years to transition this, and that's why maybe it is better to go in that sort of radical direction. I understand that it's crazy maybe to try to put 100, 200 million people on a new health insurance plan within that time frame, but that may be better than the alternative. That's just how it is.
The sad reality is that politics makes this have to be dealt with in a totally different way, where if we weren't dealing with the Republican Party, We could go to the actual experts who have studied this extensively. We could go to people like, the late Yui Reinhardt, who has written about this, and many others. And we could just put in the system that facts tell us is the best system. Sadly, we can't do that. And at this point, it may be too late for Elizabeth Warren to really regain control of the narrative around her position on healthcare. We will see, including in tonight's debate, if it comes up. I hope you'll join me for the live stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/David Pakman. There's a company called American Marijuana, and they are hiring cannabis product reviewers who will earn up to $36,000 a year for testing and reviewing cannabis products each month, filming video reviews and writing blog posts. And it sounds like they want a pothead to give money to. This is the formalization of the legal cannabis industry, and it is very interesting to see. Now, the majority of the jobs that legalization of cannabis will generate are not video reviewers. I completely understand that. But I think that this is an interesting story, Pat, because it shows that whatever negatives people fear may come also come with all sorts of other niche and different types of industries and employment. And this is very often missed, just like the tax revenue from legalization is often not considered by opponents who just say it's bad and we shouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting job opportunity for someone out there. It's very interesting. I would imagine that we would have a different reaction if someone was offering $36,000 for someone to stay home and drink alcohol every day, all day, or if someone was offered $36,000 to smoke cigarettes all day, every day. But maybe because marijuana seems to be, and the evidence shows this, less harmful than those substances.
Sure.
Or we just treat them different. It just seems more like an interesting story. Like, ooh, someone gets to do this. Someone gets to review marijuana products all day. Doesn't that sound like a fun job?
Yeah,
I think that's what this is.
I think it's the Denver Post, which has a full-time marijuana journalist or something like that. I forget what they call him, the cannabis courier. I don't remember what the name is. There's some clever name for it. And in the same way, having the equivalent for alcohol doesn't really seem logical, but a lot of that is because it's not just the products that there are to cover, it's medicinal uses, it's research, it's how it ties in with the war on drugs, it's the state versus federal battle and conversation that's happening. So I think it's very interesting. And, once again, when we look to Massachusetts, we legalized gay marriage before anybody else, and everything was fine. And of course, now that it's legal nationally, we know that there's no problem with it. We legalized medical marijuana. I don't remember when. We've now legalized recreational marijuana. Everything's fine. And hopefully that is the direction that things will continue to go in. I don't know what else to say other than that seems to be where things are headed.
I get a sense of pride being in Massachusetts, living here, knowing in part that I have that pride because, we are the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. I think that's a great thing that we did in 2003. And, many other states followed suit after that. And now it's the law of the land. Maybe Colorado feels that same pride in being the first state to legalize recreational marijuana.
I think they do.
Especially after other states have followed the trend, like they're becoming the pot capital of the world, maybe. I think, that's something to be proud of.
I wasn't necessarily proud of doing this next story, and that's why I decided not to do it on the broadcast show, despite it being very ripe for clicks. But Pat insisted that we talk about it on today's bonus show, so we're going to. Congressman Eric Swalwell has been doing a variety of interviews because he is on the House Intelligence Committee that has been questioning impeachment inquiry witnesses. And he was doing an interview with Chris Matthews a couple nights ago. And it sounds like he passes gas. It sounds like there is an audible incident of flatulence, so to speak. And it immediately blew up the internet, and people arguing and people slowing it down like the Zapruder film to look at the exact moment where he pauses his speech and holds his breath in order to propel the release of the gas. This is all so childish, Pat, and it is also sort of funny, but it's also incredible because it has taken over the narrative in some circles, much like the water-drinking George Kent did last week, where we have devastating impeachment testimony, and a lot of people are talking about Eric Swalwell farting.
Yeah, well, let's continue talking about Eric Swalwell farting, though, because it is kind of funny, right? We're allowed to do that for this segment of the bonus show. That's
Sure.
okay, right? Okay. Yeah, and this was one of my non-negotiables. I was like, we have to talk about the Eric Swalwell farting story. Otherwise, I'm not doing the bonus show today. You would have been left alone to do it on your own. There's a counter theory to this, which is that maybe it was just Chris Matthews, the host of the show, his mug scraping across the desk. That's what the official Hardball Twitter account put out there, that it wasn't, in fact, Eric Swalwell farting. And to this, Eric Swalwell posted on Twitter, total exoneration. So yeah, this is all very funny. The first time I saw the clip, I kind of bought into the mug scraping theory, because I thought, that makes sense. There are other sounds that we people make that may sound like flatulence that aren't actually flatulence. It could be like a chair moving. It could be the desk moving. It could be a cup scraping across the table. But then I played it back once more, and I saw the pause that Eric Swalwell takes, and I kind of like see his body like kind of jolt up a little bit, and it made me question, like, was he trying to hold it in and just couldn't do it?
Yeah.
Now I have no idea. I could go either way. I could be persuaded either way on this one.
The video is very, very suspicious, and I don't really know what to make of it, but it is, I believe that this too shall pass. And I know that Eric Swalwell made that joke. Apparently, Chrissy Teigen, who I still am not sure who that is, but I know she's very well known, she apparently was involved, and she says she believes that it was a flatulent incident.
Well, the unfortunate thing is that Chris Matthews should be as much of a suspect as Eric Swalwell is, because they were both mic'd up at the time. Like, it's not like you close out Chris Matthews' audio whenever Eric Swalwell is speaking. They're both talking at the same time, and they both have live mics there. But because Eric Swalwell was on camera, it seems like he's getting the brunt of the blame, and I don't think that's well deserved. I think Chris Matthews should also be roped in here as a suspect too.
Yeah, he's getting the brunt of very blunt blame, I think, is the way that I might turn it into a tongue twister. Will this be devastating for Eric Swalwell's shot at being the Democratic nominee? No, those chances torpedoed long ago. And I think, listen, big picture, I don't think this is really going to affect him too much, and I don't think it should.
No, I think you're right that this too shall pass. But for the meantime, at least it's like something to make fun of him for, and it's something that will entertain us all for the next week or so.
It's certainly entertaining a lot of right-wingers who don't want to talk about the content of the impeachment inquiry. That's for sure. Ben Shapiro tweeting about it, as opposed to the important things that are going on this week, and they are numerous. That does it for today. Tonight, debate live stream, twitch.tv/David Pakman. Tomorrow, more impeachment hearings, new show, new bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.